Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Force here, and today we'll be taking a look at a Shaman Competitive Control deck. This was originally posted up on Hearthstone by Mad Skull. The deck's got a strong early game with cards like Feral Spirit and Flametongue Totem, plus your hero power totems, allowing you to fill the board without dropping many cards. Direct damage from the Lightning Bolt and Lava Burst either can be used defensively in the early to mid game or offensively in the late game, and then the late game finishers with Ragnaros and Malygos. Now with the general premise out of the way, let's take a look at the deck in action. So as is the case with a lot of control decks, this deck really shines in the mid to late game. Now we're playing against a priest here, so it's pretty important to keep in mind who your opponent is when you're looking at your opening hand. Because it's a priest, I love the Azure Drakes. I actually am considering keeping both of them because it's got that 4 power, which makes it difficult for the priest to deal with. We have the Fork Lightning for some early game and the Feral Spirits. Frankly, I'm actually not too disappointed with this hand, so we're going to hold on to it. Normally, I would not hold on to double of the same card, especially a mid-game card like Azure Drake, but again, because we're playing against a priest, having a 4 power creature is quite strong. So early game with this deck typically consists of you dropping down your totem call and dealing with any early threats through your spell damage, or even things like a Feral Spirit. So we're quite happy for the first few turns just to be placing down the totems. This is not a Bloodlust Shaman deck, not at all. We've got very strong overload cards, very strong mid to late game, and some things that really synergize well with spell power. For example, our spell power cards plus a Malygos. That's really all you have to say. Lightning Bolt, a Lava Burst, those things can be incredibly strong late game finishers. A Lightning Bolt, in and of itself, plus a Malygos, is significant damage in the late game. So it can be very strong. Okay, so we've got a Lightwell that we are up against now. So what do we think about that? It's an 05. It's going to be healing him up. We could shock it. But right now, we don't even have any damage going at his face, so I might just leave it in play. Now, the other concern is him pumping that up to a 5/5 if that's the sort of deck that he is playing. So, considering Feral Spirit, decided on Feral Spirit. So we're going to place down the Feral Spirit just in case he goes all crazy shenanigans with this thing, turns it into a 5/5 this turn, or even worse, and holding on to these two to see what he does with this. I don't want to preemptively respond to something he might not do when these may be stronger in the late game against something else that he has. Here is more health. I'm now almost positive as to what he's going to do with this in terms of pumping up its attack. But since we have these taunts and he has to deal with these first, I might just leave that at an well, let's see, let me think actually. We're sitting at 2. I could coin into something. I could coin into this and then just deal with that. And you know what? Because this heal is going to offset the damage that we're going to do, I'm actually going to choose to do this. We're going to go like this, and I am going to use the Hex. And then we're just going to deal with that and go for an attack. And rather than having his heal offset, now the other option, of course, would have been to Earth Shock that bad boy. But then we're concerned about, even with that Earth Shock, he could still... Okay, that's only 2 damage across the board, so we are still okay with our taunts in play, and that is fine by me. Turn 5 now. We've got the Azure Drake. We could also Flametongue Totem for some rather significant damage this turn. Could also drop this in play to give them that extra health as well. I'm gonna go with the Flametongue right now. And we're also gonna go ahead and drop down a totem, hoping for the healing one. What do we get? Oh, we did not get the healing one, but that's okay because we got 8 damage to his face. So many options with this deck. This is definitely one of the more complicated decks that I've featured in these deck spotlights. You really have to think about every turn. Now, I was just betting on the fact that he does not have another Holy Nova, and even if he does, doing this Defender of Argus wasn't going to protect them from that, so I decided to rather push through that extra damage with the Flametongue Totem. And the other benefit is, if he Holy Novas, this thing's still in play. He's going to choose to Holy Fire that. That is he's really playing on his back foot. I'm really happy with the way that this game is going so far. I have to quite express that here. Now, we could Azure Drake this turn. We could also, again, put down that Defender of Argus. We've got another Feral Spirit, but I'm kind of just wanting to sit on that for now. Let's go with the Azure Drake. We're going to get the card draw. And we ended up drawing into a Lightning Storm. Okay, so now there's something else for him to deal with. He's got to deal with the Azure Drake, because that is threatening in and of itself. The spell, he obviously realizes spell power is something he doesn't want in play. It's pumping up our Forked Lightning, our Earth Shock, and our Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm in particular is so very effective with any spell power in play. 3 to 4 damage across the board for 3 resource. Very strong. And that's the thing with these Shaman cards. They're so incredibly strong. But you have to worry about that overload. And you always have to constantly be thinking about how you're going to deal with that overload. So now we have a 7/7 in play. Doubles the damage and healing of his stuff. So what do we do to deal with that? Well, obviously we can Earth Shock and... I'm just trying to think of exactly what I want to do here. Let's see, we go 5. That's going to turn it into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to do that. We're going to go with the Azure Drake. And then, ooh, very nice draw. And then we're going to do this, which is going to do 3 damage. And then we can go 4, 5, and 6, 7. We lose our taunts, but we can always play them again because we have another Feral Spirit in our hand. And now we have double of the plus spell power cards in play. So our Forked Lightning is now 4 damage to 2 creatures. Our Lightning Storm is 4 to 5 across the board. Quite hilarious. And next turn, we might end up dropping the Earth Elemental in play, although we do have to consider Mind Control. So that's something we definitely need to keep in mind. And for that reason, I'm actually probably not going to play the Earth Elemental. Unless he Mind Controls one of these guys right now, I won't play the Earth Elemental. You always have to consider that potential threat when playing against a priest, whether or not you're going to drop a huge card in play. So let's see if he's going to use his Mind Control on an Azure Drake. That's also betting on the fact that he doesn't have 2 Mind Controls in his hand. But that's a chance I'm willing to take. If he drops a Mind Control right now, I'm willing to take the chance that he doesn't have a second one in his hand. All right, so he's got a Taunt plus Divine Shield. He's also going to heal himself up a bit. Okay. So what do I want to do? We can drop him down, pop the shield off, and then we can attack through it. We end up losing a lot because of that. The other option, and I think the better option, is going to be... We're going to go with this, pumping these guys up to 5. And then we can just attack into that with that. Now, with the other 3, I'm actually going to do an Unbound Elemental. And he decides to leave because he realizes that in the game. Well, a little premature, but the win was definitely coming. This was a very strong showing. Let's take a look at the deck list. Okay, let's go ahead and get things started. At the top of the list, we've got 2 Earth Shocks. The biggest advantage to this card is the silence for dealing with any of those very threatening late game legendaries and just any creature that's got very strong abilities attached to it, even just to get by taunts. Forked Lightning for some early game creature removal. Same thing with the Lightning Bolt, although the Lightning Bolt, as I mentioned, can be an incredibly strong late game finisher. A turn 10 Malygos plus a Lightning Bolt. That's 8 damage just right there, let alone if you have any other spell power creatures in play, such as the Azure Drake or your Totem. A very, very strong late game finisher, but if you need to use it early game, if you're playing against an aggressive deck, that can take care of it as well. Stormforged Ax, again, for early game creature removal. Flametongue Totem, pumping up your totems, pumping up any of your early game creatures for some extra damage. The Feral Spirit's just very strong. You get 2 taunts in play. They're 2 3s. It's also a great way, fantastic way to protect things like your Mana Tide Totem. Very strong cards that you want to keep in play as long as possible. Dropping a Feral Spirit after that Mana Tide is going to keep it in play longer, with the exception of direct damage to it. Or mass removal, of course. Hex for dealing with those big threats. We've got 2 Lava Burst, not only great creature removal in the early game, a turn 3, 5 damage, but again, a late game finisher, coupled with a Malygos, coupled with an Azure Drake or any other spell power, makes it very strong. Lightning Storm for that mass removal, Flametongue Totem, card advantage. It's just a beautiful card. We've got the Unbound Elemental. There's so much overload in this deck, it really wouldn't make sense not to have one of these. You could potentially even play with 2 of these, simply because of the sheer amount of overload this deck runs. Defender of Argus, again, really great at protecting you in the early to mid game to allow for that strength of your late game to come into play, getting those 2 extra taunts plus pumping them up. Azure Drake, spell damage plus that draw of a card, and it's a nice 4/4, particularly good against priests who have difficulty dealing with that 4-power creature. The Earth Elemental, what can I say? A coin. This is a turn 4, 7/8 taunt. It's hilarious. I mean, it's just so strong. It is such a strong card. I guess that's why it's epic. We've got 2 of the Fire Elementals, a nice solid 6/5 creature that has that benefit of that 3 damage when it comes into play. And then the late game finishers and the Ragnaros for that 8 damage, and Malygos as well for that 4/12. Just a beefy creature. Plus 5 spell damage, though, is what makes things like Lightning Bolt quite hilarious. I think something else to keep in mind here with Ragnaros, if that random damage at the end of turn isn't something you want to deal with, you could also silence your own Ragnaros, and then all of a sudden you're attacking with an 8/8 instead of having that random damage be dealt. Just something to keep in mind. That is deck list here for the Shaman Competitive Control deck, originally posted up on Hearthstone by Mad Skull. Very solid deck, also again quite expensive, not the easiest to make, but I've been playtesting it, and it is quite effective. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. And as always, keep watching and keep owning.